Well, for the regular viewers that watch the channel every day, 4630, the duals are on it. The inners have been moved in to accommodate the duals for proper spacing. And I even got the wheel painted in there, the rim painted. If most of you remember, that was kind of a gray. That rim had evidently been replaced. It was a silver rim. And I'm just going around and continuing to work on the tractor, which somebody puts 2 square lights up there, which I don't like. That light there is good. That light there is brand X junk. So squares coming off, that's the red wire. I'm tracing that through. They're going to get thrown in trash. Actually, I keep them for something else. And the factory lights, like that one, will be put on there. And then we're going to run new wires and run it so we have the 50 series style, where there'll be one here too with a factory light. I will get a new SMV sign there. And here we're missing the little hose that goes down, so that's why it's running oil on top of the sway block. The rest of this castings and everything actually are original paint, so I do not believe that I will replace it, repaint it I mean. So I've gotten a lot of comments on how to move these wheels in and out, and a lot of guys have a lot of problems with it. It's actually not as bad as they look, but they're not super easy either. So for the people that are looking on YouTube, trying to figure out how to slide duals in or out, this video will be mainly for that purpose, instructional wise. And again, for the regular viewers, this is the update on the 4630. I also got to flip these handles around, because when they put that side on this side, that side on that side, which makes a different category hitch, nobody ever flips the levers. So again, if you know me and follow my viewer or follow my videos, you'll know how particular I am. I like to have every nut and bolt where it's supposed to be. The first step on working on these tractors, to get these bolts, you really need to take your dual hub off. So the dual hubs, they'll have a snap ring that goes in here, a big snap ring. You can get screwdrivers under it. Pop that off. You may have to break your wedges first and then knock the hub inward to get access to your snap ring. Otherwise you won't be able to get to it very well, but you will need to get that snap ring off to get the hub off. The second thing you're going to do is be on the inside. There's going to be 3 wedges there. And this is the 10 bolt hubs, which were used on like this 4630, all your 40s. Well, if it was an early 40 series and it was a smaller frame, like a 42, 44, 4040 is going to be a 9 bolt hub. But if it is a 10 bolt hub, you're going to notice there's three big bolts there, and on around. And then on the outside, you're going to see 3 more big bolts. This one, this one, this one. And these are what they call pusher bolts. So go ahead and remove those inner bolts I just showed you. Then remove these bolts, or take them, they're all just like a thread left. Then you start rattling on these 2. We use a 1-inch impact, and those push this half of the wedge. There's a wedge here and a wedge here. This wedge here, and my fingers are going, that's the inner bolts. These bolts here are the other wedge. So one wedge pulls this way, the other one pulls that way. The pushers will push in on this wedge. They should break it loose, but you may need to go around your lightly tap it with a like a sledgehammer. So once those break loose, then you can go ahead and you can tap it a little bit more, and you'll get it to come loose. And you can do what I did and pick the hub up, which weighs probably around 100 pounds, and then the wedge almost super glues itself to the axle and falls off on top of your foot, and about half breaks your foot but in the process. But Be careful when you're taking those off. Those wedges are heavy. They like to stick. Rust is your enemy with this. This tractor we're particularly looking at, I think at one time sprayed liquid in, which was a popular thing to do in the 1970s, and I believe that led to some of the corrosion. But the dual hub should be fairly easy to remove. Now the inners are going to be a tougher to remove deal. I'm going to go over here and show you a 30-20. This is a 30-20 gas here. It'll be pretty much the same setup, and I'll take you out and show you the newer style wheel hubs here in a few minutes. But again, you have this half the wedge with these bolts here, these three, then pusher and pusher. Then you have your little rack and pinion, and then on the inside, you're going to have your other three bolts there. You do not need to loosen your inner ones at all. What you're going to want to do is go ahead and take these out, these three bolts, take them out or take them down to the last thread. Take your big impact and work your pushers in and out, until they're, make sure they're free. If they're not free, then you're going to need to heat this or tap on this part with a hammer until you get the rust out of them. And you're going to push them in as hard as you can push them, without snapping something, of course. And then you want to take a sledgehammer, and a pretty good size one, with a flat end, and give the end of your axle about 10 really good heavy blows. And then take your impact, put back on those pushers, give them some more rattling. Then again, repeat cycle with blowing the end of the axle maybe 4 or 5 times. That should pop it loose. If it doesn't, go ahead and tap around here. I've seen it where you'll actually start to move this a little bit, but then it just won't quite come loose, which was the instance on that 4630. Tapped around it, actually tapped the top of the axle, medium to light. A little more impacting, a few more dead blows, the end of the axle came right loose. During the process, we did soak everything with WD-40. One thing that's good that I've seen on the internet over and over is using ATF fluid and acetone mix, 50-50. You can Google that on YouTube, and it'll give you the chemical breakdown as to why it breaks rust down much quicker than any other penetrating fluid. So if you look at this, the wedges are, see, there's half. That gap right there is, so then there's the other half. And you got this rack and pinion deal here on the front of the axle, these little cogs. And this deal here is a pin that goes through, and it's got like a little gear, and it runs on these little chatter marks. And this wedge here has the keyway, which is what powers your wheel around. So if you can get this wedge broke loose, your wheel will pop loose, and it'll kind of tilt on you. You want to do all that work with the tractor actually jacked up, so the tire's off the ground an inch or two. And then again, this thing here, this little pinion deal, about 8 out of 10 times be frozen solid, so you can either heat this up to get it broke loose, or blow air in there and penetrating fluid, or do what I did and tap all around it with a hammer and just keep knocking the rust out of it. But it'll likely be frozen solid. So if you can get these broke loose, get your wheel to tilt, make sure these are on top, your little knurls are on the dead top. Put your foot against the tire and wheel, make sure it's held 90 degrees. And if you get this broke loose, and you can ratchet it in and out usually with a big end wrench. We had a 3-foot pipe and a wrench on ours, and we work it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally we got where it started to turn and broke loose. If you're in an extreme situation of rust, you may need to go ahead and break the other wedge loose in there, but just the one outside wedge is beyond sufficient for loosening pretty much any wheel. I mean, I've seen horror stories of guys having pressing on these things. I've heard of guys driving the tractors around. Once they're set, they're set. They're not going to come loose. it takes either heat in this region with penetrating fluid or hammering. We had the other 3020, which was the worst we've ever had. We just had to heat this pretty much red right in there and then cool it off. I have seen them strip. I've seen the pusher bolts break. You can back these out and then hammer on them a little bit. These bolts, as they're backed off, which will kind of act like a pusher. And there are some tools that are made that slip over the axle like a half-cut pipe that'll go in there, and you can beat directly on the wedge. But driving a tractor around, they'll never actually ever break. Once they're set, they're set. You need to actually shock load it with a hammer. So we've moved quite a few old tractors that have probably never been set before, and really haven't had a whole lot of issues moving them if you do it right. And here's a 4850 hub. It's identical as that 4630, and somebody has moved it at one time and they've gotten a little rough on it with a hammer. It was not me, but you gotta be careful when you're dealing with that because you actually are dealing with cast. Same dual hub as that 4630. This one here is a 7200R, and this is the new style hub, which do not have the bolts on the inside at all. They have external wedges, and you can see the little black caps there. You actually put bolts in there to push the wedges back out. And the same story goes. So there's if you see that one there with the nut on it, that'll get backed out. That's the stop, the nut. You can see the others there, tip of my finger, how that has those special little ends. That's so you can use them as pushers. Then on the inside wheels, you have same deal, and there are some pushers there already in that, but they're all tightened from the outside style wheel. And there's the rotator there. This is a majorly improved design. You can even see right there at the tip of my finger that hub, the wedges actually penetrate through the back of the hub. But majorly improved design over the older style. No bolts on the inside, all externally located. And John Deere did that when they changed over to what they call the Stub Hub Wheels, which are this design wheel. You got your cast center, then they can use different rims because the centers will be the same for all, and they just use different rims. So we're using a 42, a 46, a 50, even like a weird 320 54 tire. You can get the, you're gonna have the same center. Simplified things for them. So hopefully this is somewhat educational. Again, you won't have any problem getting these to move on these style tractors. A lot less time consuming. And if you're a regular viewer, weird gap here. Do you know? Where the heck's this thing going? I don't know. Weird. Anyway, stay tuned for more, and more videos coming right up. It's springtime, so we're back to doing things outside, at least without freezing to death. And I think we actually ducked the rain this weekend. Kind of looks that way anyway. But if you have these dual hubs, if you have any questions, throw it in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer. So thanks for watching, and please hit the thumbs up button, and if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And that one guy that hits the thumbs down button, yeah, I think I know who you are actually. Oh yes, and we're about to start working on this thing. A little bit more there to fix than I anticipated, but pretty impressive machine. And it does require a 5 SCV if you're curious. And one last thing, somebody asked me if I got rid of our 1795. Says, hey, we get that 1794. We don't. There's 1795, 1223, 1790, 1223. Boom, 2 of them. Hopefully that answers your questions. So looks pretty good in this sea of green in here.